Chilly here with Sirius Talis Moon, and this is Moon Hour, Moon Day. Moon is slowly applying to Beta per se, but also to square Mars. I was almost duped to make a Beta per se talisman, but fortunately, I stopped on time since the Moon squares Mars. Um, yeah, and of course, conjunct Uranus. Um, but I have some more Aries, Saturn in Aries, Neptune in Aries. Now, if I try to think about an Aries archetype, um, Aries is a sign of new things, and it's a sign of suddenly being able to, or suddenly taking action where we weren't able to take action before. Now, because Neptune is an outer planet, okay, the Uranus conjoining of Aries was midway into Aries. So, with Uranus going through Aries, in the beginning, it included both the cases that we couldn't do anything about and the innovation regarding that, namely the Me Too. Now, if I had a good advice for anybody during Aries, is when something is in the beginning of Aries, try to think about what are the things that you've been doing that you know violate the boundaries of someone. And try to think to yourself, if you have a mindset that says, oh, if they just accept that, or if they do nothing about that, or kind of like if I can get away with that. Because if there is such a thing, I wouldn't take the risk that it would last for the entire Aries. Definitely, it's not the time to try to eliminate people. That's the kind of transit Saturn Neptune in Aries. Oh, a 13 years old girl ran away from a psycho killer and leaked the classified documents of his funding by classified project budget while carrying his hidden cameras with her. Okay, it's Aries. It's that type of a crazy thing. It opened with Epstein list including everyone, and that which is missing by the end of the year, it won't be. The more people try to make evidence go missing, the bigger the case against them. The evidence missing is the evidence to your victims needing to escape you. Thinking that you're gonna have it under control for the entire Aries, you know, and this is the sign. I'm telling this to you as a person that has been covering the chart of the greatest military alliance, and literally almost the only active one. Things that I saw 2024 are compounding now. even for the most remedial people, you know, it's calling for it. Unity. Okay, but what the things that I was talking about is how the military operations, I'm not talking even about the jabs, I'm talking about the old stuff, MK Oft and MK Ultra, they compound. Okay, and it's not the fault of the people that are now in, and that's the nature of things that compound. Um, they compound for not for centuries in that case, but they compound for decades, and it's very difficult to convince that something that has worked for several centuries is having its deadline right now, even though we have cases in the past where people were exposed for offenses, let's say against children, in history. Okay, it's not unprecedented, and here is the thing. I think, except for me, because I studied, I was of the generation of astrologers that could study from YouTube. And before me, it didn't exist. To be an astrologer, you had to be mingled in. To be mingled in, there would be limited things you could talk about. And this is also probably why my readings were interesting. Um, so from that, leaving away the mundane events right now, to each and every person. Now, each and every person, it can be a person that works in a high-tech company, a person that works in a weapon company, a person is founder of, I don't know, minerals mining company. Individuals are going to call out power. Saturn in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius. Individuals are going to call out power. And power will not be able to evade through the many masquerades that were working for the time that they were working. And let me tell you also why. You see, 28 Saturn returned to the Rolodex. I knew that when I cover something like the Rolodex, the Epstein list, I don't cover that from a perspective that is superficial or shallow. I'm not going to talk about the truth without talking about the way they torture people until they cross the threshold where they try to get the torture out of them and they become sadistic while they're being tortured. And that is a part of the programmings. And when it's a child that doesn't have a place to run, and then they test it. And then they receive love, the closest approximate to love. But when a person is thirsty, a drop of water, and if we understand what's done, then we can understand what do we need to target to change the reality. So I'm not here playing God, but this is not the transit to think that everything is going to be fully under control and they're just going to fool all the people all the time. You have no idea how many times I was hearing the word meritocracy before the Epstein lists were with all the academia in them. Now, in a zero rape, zero slavery society, I don't know if having competent people, which is supposed to be meritocracy, um, certain positions would be necessarily bad. But we're not in that society. We're not in that culture. If we take a different culture, I don't know. The people would believe a lot more in authority when it would be based on zero rape, zero slavery. And there wouldn't be secrets hiding and compounding. So, but definitely there is a calling for decentralization of power, but more so individuality and sovereignty. Now, another thing that came up, Neptune in sign of Venus and Mars, I talked about it yesterday. Neptune is also, I will speak in Aries problems, because one could see it as disease related to inflammation, but it's not just health. It is also an all-encompassing. Even the health problem has other reasoning. And the underlying hidden solution, while Neptune still in 0 degree Aries, to the problems with Neptune in Aries lies on attaining zero rape, zero slavery life and connecting with a sense of self, sexual or asexual. But if it's asexual because of trauma, not to fool oneself about it. And if it's hypersexual because of trauma, not to fool oneself about it. Neptune can bring miraculous healing to the point, but it would be less loss and less crisis for people that get that this is where the things, because it affects inflammation in the body, it affects um, economic choices, susceptibility to mind control, um, stability of the currency, stability of the real estate market, um, equity in and the ethics of rare earth minerals. Okay, and the ability to have a defense when it's needed. Okay, if we train our intelligence by raping them, and I don't mean the women. Mars here is the boys before it's the women. It affects women, but it starts with the boys. Those secret societies, they were run, by whether androgynous people, but even in the androgynous society, they were humiliating people's masculinity and femininity. They were emasculating, but femininity was a humiliation ritual. Um, the order of the nihilist. It's real. So Again, if you're dealing with surviving something like that, I don't have any smart words to say. Um, Perhaps to know um, that you're not imagining. Yes, they can take, when they torture, they can take identities and present themselves in energy and identity, different identity, and so on and so forth. But in the essence that it happened, and it seems so unreasonable because it really is. So it's a journey through self-trust, sense of self, um, the awareness that those things can happen to a person. So we're gonna have those miraculous healings as well. People that were um, compounding with shame and self-criticism may find miraculous healing from venues they least expected. Now, if you deal with something that sparked or that resonated, or is a personal case with Neptune, you never know who your story, your poem, your creation might resonate with. And it might be that, for some people, it can be, I don't know, a father, a brother, a sister that they feel like they can't reach, or can't reach them. Reach out to the world with these issues because you never know. That's something I learned with the outer planets. It's a societal thing. How many people were harmed by any one of the Epstein lists, including Epstein himself, of course, before that name was even out? And how many times they couldn't do something about it before they did something about it? So those are things that I think some people, there's a joke about relations between men and women. And Aries and Taurus are very simple signs. They're the first sign of the zodiac, so it's simplistic. And it's the saying that if a woman drives a car and she doesn't know the way, she's gonna ask somebody. If a man drives a car and doesn't know the way, he's gonna wait until he collides into a tree to realize that he has crushed his car, and then try to make it himself. Now, in Aries is that man archetype, okay? Even in women. So some people are going to collide, okay? They're going to collide or they're going to crash before that message has a way to even reach them. But some not. Some because some have already had that intuition, and I'm putting this episode out there to say that that intuition is probably not wrong. They say, oh, what are you gonna do about the Epstein list and so on and so forth? What are you gonna do about it? Check if you are invested in any of these companies. There are many things to do about it. Even the public awareness is something to do about it, because those were media conglomerates as well. That the satanic panic is actually the Epstein list. Okay, the fact that people swiped it under the rug as satanic panic in the 90s is the same case. That was just Saturn, Neptune, 0 degree Aries. This is not me too went too far o'clock. I cannot state that enough. And are people that are still smug about that? You know the saying, win the battle, lose the war? What happened after the Second World War? Suffragists were in concentration camps. Okay? There's no point to gaslight about that history. After Second World War, women got not only the right to vote, but they got the right to vote because they had businesses that they owned, because they had no choice. Now, let me tell it that way. It wasn't the suffragists. It was probably the women that would say the Me Too went too far, but then they lost their husband. They lost his savings because it was confiscated after the war to give shilumim, to give compensations. Study the word shilumim. Okay, I'm going to spell it out for you in Hebrew. If you take one thing from Israel, say this word and say it loud. Palestinians probably know to spell it well. Shilumim. This is the picture of the word. Come on, it has to have some calligraphy to it. Okay, that is the word. Look at it very well. Paint it. Probably you're still gonna need it in Hebrew. Shilumim. That's your 401k. I don't care what your country is, what your country did. So, wieder, the Dutch, wieder Gutmachung. Okay, basically supposed to correct the wrongs. Reparations. Reparations doesn't begin to tell the word. Say the word shilumim. Now, Right now, most of the savings of most of the people in most of the countries, all of the countries around the world, are basically looted because the world will have to pay so much shilumim. So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that 15 years of something going through the sign of war is okay. Yeah, because that would just be wrong. But like I said, it was probably the women that said that the Me Too went too far, that later had to hold a business. They had to feed the children. They suddenly began to understand in all these male-related things because they were the new men. And then when voting came around, they were like, wait a second, if I need to file so much paperwork to just run a business, to feed my children, it's telling me that I'm going to need to file another report and pay another tax. Where is the funding for my children? They say, oh, you don't get to vote. I say, I get to support the country's economy and save it from being completely dependent on humanitarian aid, and I don't get the right to vote? You want me to flirt a bit with that other country and get them to not pay this country? Those were the women that said that the Me Too. If they were keeping the suffragists alive, it would never happen. Zero rape, zero slavery. But they kept the women that said that the Me Too went too far. So, as much as it's aggravating, sometimes it's these women that will end up granting us the right to vote. Just like right-wing regimes sometimes ending up giving more social rights. There's an Italian country dealing with that right now. But it's true, if it's we love you, Macron. I was talking about the aftermath of the Second World War. Social rights were, even if they were granted by the left, sometimes people would later vote center right to preserve. Not public housing in Netherlands, but um, yeah. But this is simply the principle of negotiations. Now, on a person-to-person level, just in Aries is the best way to do Aries is to live and let live. And it's an economic principle. Live and let live is not loot the other, prevent from them being able to do any type of vocation, or housing sovereignly and independently, and then tell them to just live their lives. That's not. Okay. It's Aries. Aries, there's a call for individuality. So those um, societies that require oaths of silence or to sacrifice people, it shows now, particularly with Saturns, that undermining the individual doesn't end up well. That's the logos of Aries. Now, with Neptune, there can be the gift of grace, which means if somebody did wrong in the past, okay, but now it's time for them to grant that each individual will get their basis needs met. Can't be now. Big shout out, you know, Ali Mac forever. The even I was only beginning to connect the dots that in a safe society is no such thing that a person doesn't have a safe place to stay. The fact that we've normalized it around the world, like people can't be wondering about bombs going down, going boom, or school shootings, or 9/11s. Where, if a person doesn't even have a place to stay, I say there's a lady trafficked. It's not even working lady because she's trafficked. It's slavery. Somebody's trafficking her. She says she's there for 30 years. 3 decades. All the good people in the community. All they really have to do is to come and besiege the house of the place. Part of community. They wouldn't even have to bring guns. And more than that, if they would all besiege the house of the place of the person, not threatening, not shaming, not blaming, just saying, hey, dude, you're welcome here, but you can't do this to women here. This lady, she needs a place to stay. It's no such thing doing those things, kidnapping, forcibly drugging people. There's no such thing in this community. If you need housing, if you need food, whatever, but you can't be doing those things. If an entire community would besiege the house of a person, they wouldn't even need a gun. Now, if that person got problems with another, now we can join this entire community and take them to the house of that person. People to people. But if we leave it to the welfare, and we leave it to the state, and we leave it to the this, and we leave it to the that, now at the end of the day, this one lady becomes a besieged city. And it's not that people judge her. And that can only happen when there are little boys and girls that are afraid of their own household neighbors. And so Neptune Aries can bring some helplessness, but it also brings some miraculous healing to a core issue around something. Sexual boundary violation negates love. So Neptune, Mars, the core issue has to do with basically that something is not zero rape, zero slavery on societal level, affects ta 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 ta. But when we're talking about the core of the solution to the problem is that sexual energy is not to be harvested. Okay? And outer planets are to do with culture. The talks about rape culture, they were with Uranus, Aries were in Aries. Aries is also a culture planet, but outer planets in general. Why? Because rape culture doesn't respect the individual, man or woman, the I am. With Neptune through, if we do Neptune through Aries, right, which means zero rape, zero slavery, then Neptune in Taurus will just be an amazing experience. Rape and slavery deplete the life energy and they deplete the sense of self. Now, is the cultures that were built on rape and slavery, they were blaming the victim, whether it's the man or the woman. So the raped was the loser and the conquered was the feminine and the this and the that. This is persecution time for these type of cultures. And it's there, even in Great Britain. They began to have require for the policing forces to not have association with the Mason. It's like require for water to not contain H2O. People, you can't say it's impossible, so they try to appeal. And he appealed and it wasn't accepted. I was like, that's feminine. I was like, no, but if we keep doing with that, H2O is fine for water, but Mason is not fine for policing. Policing is about safeguarding sovereignty, not enslaving people. And if the Masons weren't successful at protecting people from Epstein and Detrus, the fact that it was even satirical to say that is proving my point. Aries is not joking about its sovereignty. When Aries talks about representative regime, it expects it to be represented. Aries is the entrepreneur. Okay, Aries is like, okay, I have an idea, fantastic. Where's the patent commission, the this commission, the that commission? Okay. They need to work for me. Not in the sense that they are my slave, they're not. But they're there to safeguard my individual rights, my patents, my ideas, my sense of self. This is why a lot of people turn to astrology, because you can't patent a star. And when it comes to security issues, it's prevention of, it's basically crime against humanity to prevent a person to protect himself or to represent himself or herself. A lot of weapon industries companies don't deal with those things. Aries takes it seriously. Okay, I got the other day. I was like, you got mad at a weapon company. I'm like, yeah, it's Aries o'clock. I'm not mad, not constructively. Zero rape, zero slavery, intelligence, best strategic advantage over. That aligns with sovereignty. Intelligence is supposed to grant us sovereignty, not just selected few. Saturn in Aries ruling over Pluto in Aquarius, even without Neptune. The individual people hold power accountable. Even the power of astrology, which is how basically Epstein list was declassified. Pfizer was an astrologer. Co-presence both Neptune and Chiron in Aries tell us both that the core of disability that affects ability to work has to do with something needed to be zero rape, zero slavery, and that the solutions need to account for the recovery from disability. Any new foundations we lay there need to include these. Not the sign to think that somebody can get away with things, because it directly affects another individual, and then people need to come to terms. People that have been doing things that have been affecting the sense of self and sovereignty of another individual. Their ability to have housing, their basic needs met, the survival, that's not the time to be smug about that. Okay? And this is very important, because if a person is rapey, they can't be there blaming others. If there is a handler's network that's trying to plant arches in people by trauma, so that person had better deal with what is the source of their sexual trauma. When were they a victim in secret societies? Because this is, Neptune points to secret societies or the medical field. For example, if simple essential oil, orange, very accessible, very simple. new beginnings, abundance, and so on. Deep breathing, any deep breathing herb or oil or scent would bring up the kundalini. That now, let's say person uses that oil. Amazing, it sparks up their kundalini. It means that a good crystal to pair with that is malachite. I don't know about if you can get it ethically sourced, then both of them, if you can get ethically sourced, then. And again, very simple, not too expensive, and so on. Because all of their demons around sexuality are coming to the forefront to be addressed. It's both a source of healing, but it's also, they can't be running there with patriarchal, rapist, molestation opinions about sex, women, men, and and expect that not to have compounding effect. Now, here's the thing: once Kundalini awakens, we can't unsee we can't unsee the fact that buildings are not compatible for orgasms, which is basically kind of a physiological preparation for birthing. Now, again, it's not about um, to quote the Pacini's C-section moms and so on and so forth, as that you have a baby is more important. If you want to have a baby, that you have a baby is more important than those things. But at the same time, okay, it's not about shaming someone for not having an orgasm or an orgasmic birth, and this is very important for me to stress, because understanding that our architecture was not designed to even allow or contribute to orgasm and orgasmic birthing is the issue. Now, of course, having a house is better than not having a house, and for people who want to have a family, having a family, but it shouldn't stop us from addressing those things, because in the beginning, so it's an apartment complex, not a house with a yard. It's a house, and then you put carpets on the wall. Saturn Neptune is carpets o'clock. And then there's a war, so everybody's living in the shelter. And then the shelter is a concentration camp, and then there are ovens and mass graves and stuff. Okay, so somewhere along that slippery slope, we need to stop and say, wait a second. Because, down the road, yeah, so you make your daughter wear pants, and then, oh, apparently long pants is not enough, so she needs to wear a dress. Oh, not short dress, long dress. And she needs to wear a tent. That's amazing. It's almost housing first. She be cozy with that black tent in the summer. Um, Gezellig. Does she pay luxury tax for the? Then she cannot have the freedom to roam in parks. Should I mean she would scare the bears like that? Okay, and then what are you supposed to tell a girl? Why aren't you married, Mama? Why are like you looking like a ghost but in black? Why? Because it wasn't nice to, you know, oh, if you walk around to meet people in this neighborhood or in this village, yes, no, so wear something with not sleeveless shirt, respect and modesty. So because somewhere between that tent and a spaghetti shirt in the summer, um, now here's the thing. It's pertaining to real estate. When I was in academia, I had the Bedouin skirt. So when people would have a Shabbat dinner, me, utterly secular person, would wear that Bedouin skirt and some nice white shirt or something. They kind of respect the occasion. It was funny. um, but I wouldn't mind that as long as I would have like housing outside of that. As long as I can come back from that Shabbat dinner to my life. Because certain rules, cultures, and traditions. And then I live in a place, people are Orthodox, amazing, nice people. Somewhere along the road, they decide to buy a mall and take down all the pictures of women. Um, Now, all of these things are why? Because the tolerance was hiding something, and that something was called ritual abuse that happens in both secular and religious societies. But this is how, in a miraculous way, the boundaries to the tolerance are there when the individual rights are violated. And even when we talk about immigration and stuff like that, we'd have to look into the secret societies. Because that's the only thing that can really deal with that. Also, deport them to where we travel there. To loot rare earth minerals and stuff. Um, now, that's also the thing with Aries. Um, there was slave trade, and this is not the time. In ancient astrology, there were times where slavery was normal. So we would have this lunar mansion. This slave will be loyal, but this slave will this, will this. That. Aries is the sign of sovereignty. And so, even in societies where there was slavery, people begin to question slavery and rape normalization within their own societies. Okay? And really, I don't care if you think that the Me Too went too far or whatnot. I'm not here to judge how you live your life as long as it's not, as long as you don't expect me to have these standards. Like you can think that the Me Too went too far, but if I don't have a house or a workplace or food because of this thing that you think went too far, then this is where we have a collision. This is where my individual opinion, whether Me Too went too far or not, collides with your looting of my opportunities, housing, and so on and so forth. I'd, I wouldn't silence you. I would risk my life to make sure that you are able to speak. And it's not about forcing an opinion on you, but hey, I need to have housing. Hey, I need to have safety. Hey, I need. And it's not about wearing something more or wearing something less. It's about that sense of self, that live and let live. Now, with Aries, we always get frustrated and take action about things that we could do nothing about in Pisces. In Pisces, we have the gift of grace. Saturn in Aries is having problems because think about Saturn in Aries. Let's think the father that wants the child to individuate up and get out of the house. The child that tells to the father, hey, that secret society of sacrificing boys, boy marriage, and so on and so forth, that thing need to go, Dad, because I can't even have a house around the block. Now, what if Dad is in one of these lodges? Neptune goes to the core issues, to what's almost mysterious. Why doesn't this person move out? Why doesn't this person move out? What's underneath? What's going on there? There's a secret society that does rituals abuse, so people are not even, adult people are not even safe living alone. So maybe that person needs to stay with their elderly parent. Because otherwise, that elderly parent would be a target and that person would be a target. And divided, they're not stronger. Oh, wait a second, there's a war.